What's up, marketing world? Welcome to the Agency Overhaul Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Baker, and I'm excited to introduce David Jenyns. In 2016, David successfully systemized himself out of his business, one of Australia's most successful digital marketing agencies, Melbourne SEO. Through this process, he became a systems devotee, founding SystemHUB and Systemology, which you should check out both of those. Today, his mission is to free up all business owners worldwide from the daily operations of running their business. If you get bogged down by running your business, if your business is not growing because you're a bottleneck, or if you struggle to stay organized, you need to listen to this and a lot of other things that David didn't have time to say today. So check out this interview with David, and we'll see you on the other side. What's up, marketing world? I am so excited to bring to you David Jenyns. Just introduced him, so I'm not going to say more. This guy, though, I'm excited to talk to him, learn from him. And David, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. This is going to be an awesome episode. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's dive right in. I am so scattered as a human being, and I was so excited to talk to you. Tell me a little bit about Systemology and why there is a need for it in the business world today.
Perfect. So I was in a digital agency that I ran for about 13 years, and intuitively I kind of knew systems was important because I'd had some previous businesses I was involved in where we used a lot of systems and processes. But for some reason, when I got to the digital agency, I thought this business is different. I thought Google's always updating its algorithms, and why would I want to put a system in place if it's just going to get out of date? And I thought, we're a creative digital agency. I don't want to put systems in place and have my team members turn into robots and lose all of that creativity. And I thought, we're going to need hundreds of systems. So I had a lot of this baggage that really kept me trapped in the day-to-day operations. And it wasn't until I found out that we were pregnant, and when we were expecting, I thought, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy working the 60, 70-hour work weeks. So I thought, I need to relook at this. I know some people have been able to systemize their agencies, step out of the day-to-day. I knew it was possible. And then I went to kind of revisit, well, are these assumptions that I've got true? And I tested a lot of those, and I was able to, over the course of about 12 months, remove myself from the operations and hired a CEO, or recruited her internally. She was already in the team, but we kind of moved her up into that position. And then I stepped out, and she ran that business for the next 3 years. And that really was kind of the birthing of Systemology, because I realized a lot of business owners struggle to go through that transition from I've started and founded a business, I've built it up to a certain size, and then they often find themselves the bottleneck in the business. They're involved in many different aspects. They've built up a dependency for clients and prospects and team members. Whenever they got a problem or a question, they come to the business owner, and the business owner is that person, the knight in the shining armor who solves the problem, but then that really creates a problem because the business is so heavily dependent on them. So I then bottled what I'd done with Systemology or with the digital agency. That evolved into Systemology, and then through some testing with firstly it was just coaching clients and then group, and kind of went from there. And it's my method for removing business owners from the day-to-day.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, that's got to hit home with some people listening right now. It hits home with me, and I haven't been the owner of an agency, but it is, such a big problem to have that, agency owners and anybody in marketing generally, we get into this because we want to solve problems. We want to help people, right? So how do we start? Because we can recognize the problem, like, oh no, I've become a bottleneck, or maybe just like I need some time and I keep having to do their job and my job. Like, how do we start the systematizing approach? That's the approach to Systemology.
Well, I think marketing is actually one of the best ones to look through that lens and think about Well, what is marketing? And marketing should, like all things in business, be seen more like a process rather than a one-time event. There are certain things that happen in marketing that need to happen on a repeated basis, whether that's posting on your social media, engaging with your audience, sending emails out to your database, reporting back statistics on what's working and what's not, having a process for the way that you take content and repurpose it and syndicate it out on multiple different platforms. All of these little tasks should really be happening on a particular cadence, and they're done a certain way. Oftentimes, with small business, they'll do it, especially when it's the business owner at the helm. They tend to think about marketing when they need clients. When what should be happening is you should be marketing 24/7, 365. You should be filling your funnel up with warm prospects. So the point at which you need the client, they're already in the funnel, then you can shake the tree and you've got your leads or your people that are ready to go and maybe they've already booked in. So I think firstly starting to think about, and I can see you nodding so that some of these ideas are probably already connecting with you, but marketing is a process, and you apply the 80/20 rule to it, and you think, what are the 20% of the systems that deliver the bulk of the result that must happen consistently in marketing? And you start there first. And you think about, how do we capture what we're currently doing? And that, I mean, as we kind of transition, I'll kind of take a breath between each one of these to see if anything kind of bubbles up for you, but definitely applying the rule of 80/20 first, and specifically because everybody here is in marketing, to marketing, and go, what are those essential systems?
Yeah, yeah. So somebody like me, I look at all of the things that need to be systematized, that need to be replicated, and I get overwhelmed. So I like this approach of the 80/20. Okay, what's going to have the biggest impact? So you have a process called the critical client flow.
Yes, yep.
Walk me through like how you identify the starting point with this and
Yes.
kind of what this does for us.
Yeah, so again, coming from the digital agency background, I look through the lens of this from marketing, which is brilliant because anybody who listens to this will now get it. It starts off through the lens of marketing, but it approaches business holistically. So I don't just think about marketing systems, I think about systems in all departments. But the critical client flow answers the question, if you're going to systemize your business, where do you start first? What are the first 10 to 15 systems? And it starts off by, in the top left-hand corner, and I mean, you can get the book, or you don't even need the book, get an A4 bit of paper, in the top left-hand corner, type out who your dream client is. And we do this in marketing. Like when we're marketing, you want to first figure out who is the primary person that you're going to market to. That doesn't mean you're going to stop serving everybody else, but it means it gives you somewhere to focus and somewhere to start. Then we think about what is the primary or product or service that we would sell to that dream client, as in what is the first thing that they would purchase from us that might be the gateway into the rest of your business. So in my digital agency, it used to be we would sell websites. Even though we did SEO and AdWords and Facebook and YouTube videos, we would start off with building a website because they'd come in with that, and I knew that had a defined scope of work, so we could deliver that, we could determine if we were a good fit, and then if we were, we could then introduce the other products or service. So think about what your primary product or service is for that dream client, and then all you do is you map the linear journey that the prospect, client, and the business owner goes through to deliver that product or service. So it starts off at the top of the page, and you only write a few words in each one of these boxes to keep it simple, and you're effectively trying to articulate and identify the flow in the least number of words. Like later on, we can add the detail later, but you want to think about how do you grab the attention of your target audience? That's the marketing bit. Then how do you handle the incoming inquiry? Once the person says yes, they're ready to go. Then what does your sales process look like? Do you meet with them on Zoom? Do you issue out a proposal? How do you follow up? What does that look like? Then once they're ready to go, how do you take the money? Do you take a deposit? Do you take payment up front? Do you wait until the completion of the job to get paid? Then there's the onboarding typically of the client where maybe they're filling out questionnaires, you're setting up your project management platform, you're starting to assign out tasks, you're getting ready to do the work. Then there's the doing of the work, the delivery of the product or service, and then there's the handover, getting them to come back. But if you map that linear journey, that's a great starting point to go, well, let's systemize that, because if we can deliver that core product or service without key person dependency and the business can make money without the business owner, then you're in a really scalable situation. And sometimes as well, you can drill into the critical client flow further and say, where is the pain? As in, oh, I don't have enough leads. Well, you need to drill into your marketing systems. Or, hey, we're getting leads, but we're not selling them well enough. Well, we need to drill into the sales side of things. Or, hey, I'm having trouble, if we market and we sell, it's the doing of the work. Well, then we need to look at our operational systems. But using that as a starting point, and it always starts with marketing, because you need to think about how do you grab the attention of your target audience.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. So there's a lot of parallels with when we do like funnel audits, okay, so initially, how are we getting people in? But then you also have like, okay, where are the drop-off points? Where are we seeing tension, or where are we seeing dissonance, disconnect? So I love that, looking at your business through that lens and then adjusting the systems as it makes sense.
And I'll build on something there. Most small businesses struggle with repeatability. And the business owner, when they build the business, if it's left to them, they build the system the way that they would like it to be, not the way that it is. And one of the core philosophies of Systemology is first capture what you're currently doing and what is currently working. That doesn't mean that that's world class or best practice, or just figure out who on your team. Well, Jenny answers that incoming inquiry and she does it better than anyone else. Well, let's capture and codify what she's doing, and then let's make sure that that can then be passed down to other team members, and other team members can then start to follow the same process. So that's a really big part of what we do, is the optimization and the tweaking actually happens a lot further down the line. We first capture effectively a baseline and make sure that we can delegate tasks down to typically less skilled or lower cost team members to free up higher skilled team members to work on only the tasks they can work on.
That's a really, really good point. So I have been in a lot of kind of, usually at the operations system standpoint, a lot of like task lists, and process order of operations, things like that. And you see a massive disconnect between what's actually being done and what the system should be, or the SOP.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to hear that, okay, you should start with what you have when you're creating the system and then optimize for, the way that it should be. So I wanted to ask actually a little rabbit trail on that. So you're talking about teams and delegation. So like at what point in a business should someone start focusing on building out these systems?
Yeah, good question. From day dot, it's great to seed the idea of a systems-driven culture, but you don't really get the leverage until you've got a handful of teams. If you went and you heavily documented everything, but you're the only person doing the task, then there's no real leverage there. That detail can happen later. But you might start off with simple checklists and a process for the way that you're doing something. Oh, yep, I first do this, I first do that, and it might be just single line items. And you might create short little videos to complement what you're doing as you're doing it, knowing that you're going to plug team members in behind you. That said, though, once you kind of really start to get the leverage, the sweet spot is generally probably about between 5 and 30 staff. If you're somewhere in there, then you are prime for rolling out systems, because it's all about capturing that best practice and then passing it down to that less skilled, lower cost team member that can then free up the higher value team member who can then innovate and work on things that don't yet have systems. And they can then effectively figure out the way before it gets codified and then delegated down.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I'd taken us off on a slight rabbit trail there. Do you still have that thought you were about to share?
Look, I think it might have escaped me. I'm sure it'll bubble up again. But yeah, just the idea, like we were talking about the critical client flow, and it gives you somewhere to start. You can find the pain inside that critical client flow and capturing what you're currently doing, because the business owner has a tendency, like it gets in the way of getting it done. Most businesses, because they struggle with making sure that the business is repeatable, if it's left up to the business owner is already the bottleneck. And if it's another thing on their to-do list to then document the systems, they don't have enough time as it is, let alone trying to create something new or imagine it the way that it would be. Then the business owner's trying to get it just perfect, which means they never actually roll it out. And systems, they're always important, they're never urgent, which that's why they typically sit on the to-do list. So we're trying to break that down by saying we can keep iterating, and the first version of your system is the worst version of the system. So let's just get something down, and then we can run with it and go, oh, we can make a minor tweak here, and now we adjust that. You make a few minor tweaks, and before you know it, you circle back around, and then you might do an update of the system. You re-record the video or something. But that iterative process is a big part of developing a systems culture.
Yeah, I really like that because, again, I mentioned earlier, very easy to get overwhelmed and you see this whole, unsystematized business and you need to create some order of that. Or, you're the bottleneck because you want to have everything just right. So I like painting with broad strokes and then filling in the details later. But I think you bring up a really, really important point when you are saying that the business owner should not necessarily be the one creating all of these systems in full. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that could be done better?
So the first step in Systemology, we call it the define stage, and that's the critical client flow. The second step in Systemology is the assign stage, and that is about identifying where the knowledge currently exists in the team and where you can, avoiding the business owner. It's not always the case. Sometimes it will be the business owner and you're recording it, but there are team members who already know how to do something to a good enough standard or a great standard, and other team members aren't yet up to that standard. And incredible wins oftentimes can be gained in a business by simply capturing the current best practice. Like, hey, you've got Joe and he does sales, and when he handles that incoming inquiry and he has that first call and he meets with them on Zoom, he does that really, really well. He seems to convert highly. Well, let's record some videos of Joe making those calls. Let's get someone to watch the video and pull out the key steps, and that might become version 1 of the system. And that kind of edges into this idea that the whole idea here is to make this easy for your team and for you to develop systems. Oftentimes, your best team members are just as busy as you are. And if you tell them, hey, you got to document your process, they'll go, sure, I'll put it on my to-do list and I'll get to it before I get, through these other 100 things. And they never get to it. So what we want to try and do is, one of the insights we've learned is building systems is actually a two-person job. You have the person with the knowledge, and then you have a separate person who is your documenter. And they will listen to the recordings of the knowledgeable worker doing the task, and they will pull out some of the key bullet points. And then that gets fed back to the knowledgeable worker afterwards, because everybody loves to edit, but no one loves to write from a blank page. So we give them something where they can go, oh, you know what? Step number 3 should be swapped with step number 4, and let's add this extra bullet point. And it becomes a really efficient way to get the knowledge out of the head, get it codified, make it easy for the team member so that it can get passed down. Because the team, your great team members and the business owners are some of the busiest people. So let's avoid putting another thing on their plate.
Yeah, that is brilliant. So that alone, like everybody listening to this, just go buy the book as a thanks for that alone, but then learn the rest around it. just, we don't necessarily want to stop doing the work and think through how we do the work and write it all down. So just being able to do the work and have someone there to shadow, monitor, record, whatever, document it all is just such a freeing idea, and the ROI on that is massive. So you're walking through steps here. So step
Yeah.
2 is to assign. What is step 3? Are we ready for that in this conversation?
Yeah. Yep. So step 3 is about extracting. So let's say in step number 1, we did our critical client flow and we identified maybe one of the marketing systems. It's an essential task that every day someone hops in and goes through all of our social media platforms and make sure that we respond to comments and that we make sure any posts that we've done, all the links work and everything's nicely formatted. So let's say we identify that as one of the important tasks. Then in step number 2, we say, hey, and Febby, she does that on our team the best. Great. Well, she's doing it every single day. Now, Febby's been with us for a while and she might be a higher skilled team member. So step number 3, well, let's have our separate documenter meet with Febby, or Febby might do it on her own if she's done it a few times, where she'll just record herself doing the task and as she's doing it in the moment, and she will talk over the top of it. And no matter how rough and ugly that first video is, that's okay. If you make mistakes and she has to hit back and she has to redo something, and if the video's an hour long, if the video's 2 hours long, who cares? Like, it's just version number 1. Record it getting done and talked about. And that process of then recording it, then you've got afterwards, that then goes to your documenter. Your documenter will pull out some of those key steps as we talked about. It then will get saved into some sort of central location. So this whole extraction piece, the other secret for step number 3 around extraction is you actually want to develop a system for creating systems. So your documenter, the person who's doing the task, has a way of creating a system, as in they have a way to brief the team member on what they need to be creating. Once the video comes in, they have a way that is then submitted to them. They then have a process for how they format the document, what it looks like, how they pull out some of those key steps, and the way that it's quality controlled and double checked and sent back to that knowledgeable worker. That is a process that can be developed. And you want to then streamline that. So again, it just becomes easy and then second nature for the team members. And that's that second stage, which is the extract. The third stage is then, the fourth stage is then the organize stage. And this is once you've extracted all of it, where does this knowledge live? It needs to live in a central location where everybody can access it. You could start off with something like Google Docs. Over time, you might progress to a custom tool that is purpose designed for SOP management, something like SystemHUB, where it's designed for the purposes of SOPs. And then the final step in that organization piece is to think about how do we then make sure that the systems are readily accessible at the point at which the person is assigned the task or is doing the task. So if you're using a project management platform, you have a link to the how-to document or the system inside the description of the task that's been assigned to them. Or if it's in the real world, maybe it's someone out there who's runs a bakery and they've got all of the equipment in the bakery. You might create a QR code that, when scanned on the phone, jumps to that system directly, and you stick that QR code onto the mixing machine. Or you might have an iPad out on the floor if it was in a manufacturing plant or something like that. It's about how do you then make sure, because systems at the best of times will have some form of friction. And if there's any friction, it's typically avoided, especially if someone knows how to do it or they've done it a bazillion times. So we need to think about, how do we reduce that friction? How do we make it really, really easy? I remember doing some work with a karate school, and the instructors weren't cleaning up the gym at the end of the night before they signed off and turned off the lights. So we were talking about, well, how can we create a process where, well, all of the karate instructors were filling out their timesheet because they wanted to get paid. That was one of the processes. So we kind of re-engineered the process where there was a QR code next to a light. At the end of the day, they would scan the code. It would go to effectively end of day. And there was a checklist that they would have to fill out. Once they'd done that, the checklist was to clean up the gym, and it would say, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? And then the final step was to then fill out the timesheet, which is then what got them paid. And just by removing that friction and thinking about how do we embed it into the process for what do you want to have happen, and make it easy, then guess what? They started to follow the process. So a little bit of that optimization happens a little bit later, but the takeaway is that organization stage and making it really easy, which is stage number 4 in the process, is an important one.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, being able to motivate your team to follow these systems is also valuable. Step 5 then.
Yes.
What happens after we get things organized?
Then, and it relates exactly what you said into this. Step number 5 is integrate. And that is about how do we then get the team on board? How do we motivate them? How do we have them understand that systems improve the way that they do work? Because oftentimes when a business owner introduces systems, they pitch it, the team member thinks, are they trying to systemize my job so that they can offshore it and they're actually trying to get rid of me? Or they think, I've created this little black box. No one really knows what I'm doing. No one knows how I manage these Facebook ads. So now I've got job security because we know we have to keep the Facebook ads running. Nobody really knows what I'm doing. So they for some reason, think that that's giving them job security. And we need to start to reshape it and help the team member to understand that systems will improve their situation. Systems helps the team member move up in the organization because you're delegating down to lower cost, less skilled team members, which then actually makes you more valuable, not less valuable. And there's other benefits, and everybody's different, but it's understanding the team members to go, you want to take a holiday, and when you take a holiday, you want to disconnect from work. And you don't want to have to think about work. And normally, I hop on the phone and call you up. Oh, where's this up to? Where's that client up to? And I'm chasing you up because there's not a process and it's hard for me to know what's going on. Or maybe when you come back from holidays, you've taken 1 week off, but you spend the next 4 weeks catching up on your emails and all of the tasks because no one's been doing it while you're away. Well, the reason we systemize is so that other team members can step in while you're on leave, continue to complete tasks. When you come back, you can hit the ground running, and this is a good thing for you. So again, it's integrate stage. Number 5 is all about understanding the psychology of the team member and helping them to get buy-in on this approach, and what are the things that you can do to start to foster and build a systems culture.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah, I love the psychology aspect of it and being able to show them the value that it creates for them because of those motivations for keeping things secret that you mentioned. Another thing that I see that is easily resolved by walking through your system is a lot of people don't follow SOPs because they're like, well, that's not the way I do it. But if you're documenting what they do, and that's how the system is created, like that goes away. There's no reason for them not to follow their own system. So absolutely love that.
And there's another piece there as well. All of the resistance as you introduce this new way of doing things happens up front, as in it's only with your existing staff. New staff, when they come on board, if you've got systems for recruitment and onboarding and they learn how something is done through a system for the first time, all they know is this is how we do things here. So it actually gets easier. Typically, and that's one of the reasons why some business owners find it hard to systemize their business, because they're not necessarily a systems person. They try and introduce it up front. They get resistance from the team and pushback. They might try it for 3 months and then they abandon it. But all the good stuff that comes from systemizing a business happens on the other side of that hump. and you've got to push through. And once you get to the other side, it just gets easier and easier and easier. And your systems will actually start to solve some of the basic problems, and they'll reduce the errors, and they'll make your team more productive, and they'll make it more consistent. There's a lot of benefits that come from it, but it's getting through that initial hurdle that's the challenge for many.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And then, bringing people in, you also then have training materials. So you can have a training system, which is another big gap that a lot of marketing agencies struggle with.
Yeah.
Let's move on to step 6. There's
Yes.
7 steps.
7, that's
Okay,
right.
perfect.
So step number 6 is the scale stage. Now, scale is about what are all of the systems required to grow your business that weren't necessarily identified in the critical client flow. So step number 1 was those 10 to 15 systems. Then step number 7, this idea of scale, the goal is to get to a point we call minimum viable systems, which is what is the minimum number of systems to run your business as a whole, which then starts to introduce things like, what are your recruitment systems? What are your onboarding systems? What are some of your basic finance and reporting systems and management systems? It's the identification and the application of the 80-20 rule. We're looking for the 20% of the systems that deliver the 80% of the result, but in each of the different departments. So what are the critical systems in HR, in finance, in management? And then that effectively is the next sprint of work.
Okay, yeah. So this is big. So it's easy. I've seen agencies that are run just systems overwhelm, like way too many systems for everything. Oh, you're going to go to the bathroom. Okay, here's your checklist. Here's your system for that. But then obviously we've covered the opposite end where it's just I don't know, man, figure it out, or it's just like, well, send it to the owner. So how do we end up focusing down and determining like what is critical and what's not critical, what's maybe a little too much?
So this is a good one because, I mean, you and I have the mutual friend of Mike Rhodes. That's how we connected. So I used to share an office with Mike. And Mike used to be, when he moved to Australia, because he was in New Zealand, he was an e-myth coach for a little while there. And then he came across AdWords, discovered AdWords, and said, hey, business owners need leads. This is what they're hungry for. That's what I'm going to do. So we happened to share an office when he moved to Australia. And being an e-myth coach, he was kind of systems mad. So he systemized everything. And we know Mike. Mike just goes to the extreme. Whenever he does anything, he does it world class and hits it with, a sledgehammer. So I remember sitting in my office opposite him, and he had, and I have to share the photo with you, I'll send it afterwards. It was like the Great Wall of Systems. He had literally a whole wall covered with these A4 bits of paper where each line on the paper was a system. So he went the other extreme and systemized everything. And we know, like, he works with AdWords, and I know he does a lot more now, but back then he was doing AdWords, and he had every aspect of the business systemized. But AdWords was getting out of date, as when they, every time Google would update the interface, it would break certain things. And very quickly, like, that was such a great lesson for both Mike and I, where we realized you can go too far on this. You can over-document. You can introduce way too much red tape. And before you know it, you've just got this glut of systems that are really unusable. People can't find what it is that they're looking for when they're looking for it. They don't know which systems you've got, and you very quickly forget about things. So that's where this idea of the 80-20 came from. And then thinking about each of the different departments, and you work with your department heads if you've got it, or sometimes it's the business owner, and you think, what are essential for each of these different departments? What does the HR department need to do? What is its function? What is its purpose? What are the key things? Well, it's there to recruit, it's there to onboard, and it's there to manage staff. So then we kind of drill in and we think about, well, what are the systems around that? Now, every business might be different, but part of the game here is also we want to delegate certain tasks down to less skilled team members, when new team members come on to a particular department. So let's say we think about the marketing department and we apply that 80/20, and we decide that those social media checks that we were going to get Febby to do, that she's doing, that would be a perfect task for every new team member that comes onto your team to learn, as a place to cut their teeth that's low risk, that can free up that more skilled team member, and they can oversee them, and gives you a chance to determine, is this even a good team member? Because if they can't follow process and it's a simple, easy task, or they take 3 times as long as everybody else that's ever come before them to do the task, well then within the 3-month trial, that becomes a warning. So you're identifying tasks in the different departments, and you might just start off with a handful. It might be between 5 and 10 tasks, or 5 and 10 tasks in each of the different departments are the ones that you end up systemizing. Now, some of them are more important than others. For example, the recruitment and onboarding is a really important one, and there'll be other things like, well, in finance, I've got tax obligations, and every quarter I've got to put something together and submit to the tax authority. So, and then you also need to find the balance between when you're working with a contractor or you're doing it in-house. You might go, well, I work with a tax agent. I don't really need to know the ins and outs of how to submit my tax form because the tax agent's going to do it. Okay, well, maybe then the system that you create is, well, what are all of the things that you need to get together every quarter to submit to the tax agent for them to do their work? And you systemize that chunk, the preparation. So there is a little bit of thinking, and you do have to, you'll get better at this as you start, because the other thing you start to learn is some things require more documentation than others. Sometimes a video might be enough, a 10-minute video of you doing the task. You don't need lengthy documentation explaining blow by blow. The video might be enough because you're going to recruit a high-skilled team member who's going to know how to do that thing. Whereas other tasks, you might go, well, I'm going to get a junior person on. They're going to do the social media interaction. Maybe I do over-document that one because that's the first task. So yeah, you kind of learn this as you go, and where to push and where to pull back.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful to keep in mind, is who you're creating this system for, so that you know how detailed it needs to be. A really smart, high-value person is going to be able to fill in all those gaps. Lower, on the tier chart, you probably need to give a lot more details, rather than viewing it as like, oh, I need to have this huge, massive, detailed list for everybody. It's probably going to create more problems if you create something like that for a high-value person that you're paying to think, more than just push buttons. So.
That's exactly right. You don't want to tell a highly skilled team member how to suck eggs and say, here's, left click on file, right click on open, move the, that's just painful for everybody. Yeah. For them, it might just be high level, we need to open up this, I need to create this sort of report, and I need to have it emailed to this person and that person. That again, you think about who is the person executing the task and to what level of detail do they need.
Yeah, that's good. So I know you've only got a couple minutes left. Are we missing step 7 here?
Yes. So step number 7, the final one, is the optimization phase. So a little bit counterintuitive. You don't optimize up front. You first capture what you're currently doing, and then you optimize at the other end. So optimization is about putting a basic dashboard into place, identifying the key numbers that relate to the critical client flow. So thinking about what are some numbers in lead generation, your sales conversion, number of clients you're getting, and you just come up with a set of numbers that you then start to monitor on a regular basis, at least once a month. And then that enables you to then start to pinpoint where some of the problems are. And you might go, ooh, I don't have enough leads. Now, every problem in business is a systems problem. So then you say, well, my problem is my lead generation systems. And then you have a look at, well, what are those recurring tasks that I've got? Have I got enough? Do I need more? Well, hey, maybe we need to introduce a new strategy here because we don't have enough lead flow. And then you can think about capturing either something else that you're doing, or you go out and you get a consultant who can introduce a new strategy that you can systemize and then internalize, but you then use the dashboard to help identify where are the issues in the business, and we use that as a way to guide where your attention goes to which systems might be re-engineered. So those 7 stages, it's define, then it's assign, then it's extract, then it's organize, then it's after organize, then we do integrate, then we do scale, and then the last one we finish with is optimization. And you just go through this process to reach those minimum viable systems. And once you reach that point, your business really starts to change, because the team starts to realize this is how we do things here. Then you can reduce that key person dependency. That means that the business owner and team members can take leave when they need to, or in the current climate, if something happens to a team member and maybe they get sick with COVID, or a family member does and they need to take time out, the business doesn't grind to a halt. Everything keeps growing, and then it also makes it much more scalable, because then you can start to ramp up the amount of marketing that you're doing to generate more leads, because you've got a system to scale your sales team, and you've got your operational systems ready to go, which means you can handle more capacity. Where a lot of people go wrong, especially if they just think about marketing, is they don't they can't necessarily scale the delivery of the product or service, and they very quickly tap out, and that can actually break businesses. You'll see things like Groupon, where these businesses will get flooded with a huge new influx of clients that the business doesn't know how to service, and then it will break businesses. So you want to make sure that your business is strong, and it is a case of the weakest link is what kind of pulls apart a business. All parts of your business, it's one big system, and you have these subsystems underneath. We need to identify the 80-20, and then we need to go to work on those systems.
Man, so it's the difference between a business and what you're trying to do to make money. I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
David, this has been just absolutely fantastic. I love the way that you cover this information. And where can people find more about you?
Yes, best thing to do, just I've got the book Systemology. It's over on Amazon. If you're listening to this, you're probably an audiobook person. So it is over on Audible. I read it, and I happen to have the foreword read by Michael Gerber, who wrote the book The E-Myth. So definitely worth checking it out. And our mutual friend Mike Rhodes, he's given it a review as well. But yeah, checking out the book first is a great place to start. And then if you need to go a little bit deeper, it's just systemology.com. There's links to my YouTube channel and Twitter, or you can get in touch with us.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much. I look forward to continuing to consume your information on YouTube, in the book, and checking out SystemHUB. So everybody listening, thank you so much. Go check out David's book, check out SystemHUB, and have a great day.
Thank you.